Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day today, and in this video we're going to be doing a review for Spider-Man 2, which came out in 2004. This is part of the original Spider-Man trilogy, directed by Sam Raimi, which also starred Tobey Maguire as the lead character. And to just hop right into the review for this movie, it picks up a couple years after the first one left off, and Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man is once again great. And I think this had the best character work where you just feel very connected to him as a viewer. You just care what happens to him because he's really nice to all these different people, but he's struggling to balance Spider-Man with his job, his love life, and college. And then he starts losing his powers, which he later just finds out is kind of due to PTSD and really just because he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. And Film Theory actually made a pretty neat video kind of analyzing that. So as I said, I just think he has a really good character arc in this. And then of course there's some romance in this. He wants to be with MJ, but he also wants to protect her, and then she gets engaged with the son of J. Jonah Jameson, who once again is great in this movie. He's played by J.K. Simmons, and it was just the most perfect casting in the history of the universe. So that was just spot on, fantastic. Of course, Harry is also in this movie. He's the new leader of Oscorp, and he still thinks of Spider-Man as responsible for his father's death, so he's still hunting him down. And he's just very stubborn. He really won't listen to others. When Spider-Man even saves his life once, it doesn't change anything for him. There's also just some really good dialogue in this movie, some really good quotes, and overall, the movie as a whole is very iconic. There's a lot of memes that came from it. Danny Elfman also provided the score for this movie once again, and it's just fantastic as usual. The action in this movie is phenomenal. And the one sequence that's really a standout is the train sequence where you have Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock. And the city is just really excited to have him back because he chose not to be Spider-Man earlier on in the movie. And he thought it was the right decision until he found out how much the people needed him. And I suspect this kind of took inspiration from Superman 2 because if you're familiar with the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, the first one was kind of an origin story, and then the second one dealt with him losing his powers mainly because of romance. And then when he realized how much people needed him, he got his powers back. So that's where I think this might have took inspiration from. The pacing for this movie is also just really great, and also the emotion is done really well. There's just some really well made sequences that are spot on, like when Spider-Man takes his mask off in the final battle and MJ sees it for the first time. Just a lot of understanding that goes on. Even the way he screams at the final battle is like music to my ears. It's not quite Marty McFly screaming in the Back to the Future trilogy, but it is just like really good and weird. You also have to appreciate there is some foreshadowing for future movies. Obviously, you have Harry finding his father's old stuff before he becomes Green Goblin in the next movie. And then, of course, Peter's professor, Dr. Connors, was going to be the Lizard in later movies. And even Mr. Ditkovich, who was wanting Rent, people suspected would be Kraven the Hunter. Actually, we are getting a Kraven the Hunter film later this year, I believe, but it's a different actor, and I don't even know if anyone's going to watch that. And the one guy outside of the theater was apparently going to be Mysterio in a future movie. I really wish they kept making more Tobey Maguire movies. I also really wish that the third one lived up to the hype, but we'll get into that in a future video. Now, I only had a couple of problems when it came to the first movie, and that was that it was a little bit inconsistent in tone, as well as the green screen and CGI wasn't that great. There is a little bit in there that hasn't held up completely well, and then when you get into this movie, I think it improves upon those problems I had with the first movie. It is very consistent in tone. It knows when to get a little bit dark, it knows when to get a little bit goofy, and there are a few moments where it does feel a little bit over the top, but it's okay because it's actually kind of hilarious, like when Aunt May just like bops Dr. Octopus on the head and prevents him from killing Spider-Man. And then the green screen and CGI I think just looks a little bit cleaner in this movie. And part of that is probably because there wasn't as much of it, and there was actually quite a bit of practical stuff that they did with Doc Ock. And him as a villain is just a fantastic villain. I don't know if I necessarily prefer him over Green Goblin because it was just such a good performance by Willem Dafoe in the first movie. But he definitely is a very good villain. And there's kind of been a debate on what the best Spider-Man movie is. Most people would either argue is the first Spider-Man movie or this movie, one of the Spider-Verse movies, or No Way Home. I really don't think it's either of the Spider-Verse movies or No Way Home. And as I said, I do have a couple of problems with the first movie. So I would definitely say that this movie, Spider-Man 2, is the best Spider-Man movie. Some of the others may have had more potential than it. They could have been better, but this was just executed flawlessly. Because this isn't really an origin story or the ending to a trilogy. It's kind of there in the middle. So I guess the thing they decided to make it stand out was, well, just execute this flawlessly. I guess the only nitpick I could say with this movie is that there's two kids that hand Spider-Man his mask back on the train, and the first one that speaks, I don't think his acting was that good. And maybe you could argue that the Doc Ock as a villain, him with his like tentacles things, was too similar to the Green Goblin split personality, but I don't really think that's a problem. So yeah, overall on the quality scale of 0 to 100, we'll give it a 99%. And I would definitely recommend this, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan or even just a fan of superhero movies in general. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.